Yeah, probably.
We should.
Are we live?
Somebody's gonna have to start singing
we should get the
acapella
sailor
music.
clip at the beginning where it's
Here we
like
go.
we're giving you the true north, and then us idiots come out on the screen on the backside. That'd be
We
fun.
can do that too. We can do it all. We get the whole thing going. We're pumping it up. The stock's going.
This song is metal.
All right, here we are. Welcome back, everybody. Woo! Happy Monday. MSTR, True North, episode 6. Wow. Holy moly. Stock is moving. Bitcoin's moving. We're buying Bitcoin left and right. There's convertible debt flying everywhere. There is so many things going on, and I'm excited to talk about it. We've got a crew here, our True North crew. We're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about the Bitcoin acquisition over the last week. We're going to talk about convertible debt. We're going to talk about the last 15 days of November, and we're going to have some fun. We're just going to chat through some stuff and walk through it. Tim, go ahead. You could go with the non-financial advice blurb.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is not financial advice. What you're about to hear will be amazing, but it's not financial advice. And people want to hear Creed. They want to hear Higher by Creed. We're not going to do that. Over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Tim. Okay. Now we're going to get into it. So I just want to set the stage and remind everybody why we're here, right? MSTR True North. This is a group of people, and the purpose of this is to effectively take this investment club, this crew of guys that have been in this trade for the last year and a half and have been talking about this stuff for the last year and a half. We were going to have these calls anyway. And our thought was, let's just have the calls and broadcast them to everybody. So if you guys don't like what people say, I don't care. Okay. Every single person on this entire screen has been purposefully selected for their skill sets, right? For example, right? You've got Soleil, who's selling call options. You've got Grain of Salt, who has more call options than anybody else on Twitter. If you don't like it, I don't care. He's got more power than you, and he's got a different perspective. You've got Tim, who knows how to say financial advice really well, and an amazing podcast. We've got Adrian, that's just cranking all sorts of perspectives on AI, historical Bitcoin, etc. Ryan is just crushing it, whatever he's doing, and Mason has given us the Gen Z perspective and is more wise than all of us somehow. I don't know how it works. So anyway, Mason's got to jump real quick. And Mason, you were sharing a piece of information right before this, and I want you to share it with everybody else, and you can leave right after you say it.
Yeah, I wasn't supposed to be on this call, but you guys dragged me into it. No, MicroStrategy today bought $5 billion worth of Bitcoin. And I was talking with Ryan and Jeff because I remember it was the summer of 2023. I was sitting on my porch and I was looking at the market cap for MicroStrategy, and it was $5 billion at the time. And Ryan says he remembers it when it was, what did you say, 1.4, Ryan?
1.8. Yeah, 1.8.
1.8. 1.8. Yeah, and I remember that summer it was lower than 5, but it just hit me today. We are jumping orders of magnitude higher, right? Like there's going to be what's the market cap right now? 75,
80, 88, 86, 88, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh no, it's high. It's higher. So Yahoo has an outdated share number. So the number on MSTR tracker has the updated share count that was released today with the capital raise. So that's I don't know, like.
Do you want fully diluted?
It's not fully diluted. It's just the shares outstanding. So it's like 220
86 billion. Yeah, 86 billion. Fully diluted is 98 billion.
Yeah. Bingo. Keep going, Mason.
No, it's just like we are going so much higher. We are going so much higher. And the Bitcoin buys are only going to get higher. And the market cap's only going to get higher. And I don't know, maybe a year from now, next next November, we're sitting here and we're saying, did MicroStrategy really just buy $80 billion worth of Bitcoin?
Yeah, there's a high likelihood, right? Yeah, I mean, a year from now, this could be totally crazy. Yeah, I think today. So MicroStrategy has acquired 51,780 Bitcoin for $4.6 billion at $88,627 per Bitcoin. So yeah, they bought more Bitcoin in the last 5 days. They raised more money on their stock in the last 5 days than the entire market cap was worth like a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, which is it's profound, right? Like it's a crazy statistic. The fact that they raised 4.6 billion in share sales in 5 days, and the price of the stock went up 25% is insane. That's just totally insane. I mean, to your point, Mason, right? Like the scale of this trade is getting orders of magnitude higher because there are so many people, like everybody on the screen and everybody in the chat box here, that is not selling their shares. They have the same perspective with MicroStrategy as they do with Bitcoin. And, I don't want to bring out the word diamond hands because I thought that was just totally overrun with GameStop. But it's the diamond hand mentality, but really it's the dead guy mentality, right? Like you just pretend you're dead and don't sell the stuff because eventually you're going to be able to use it as collateral and future leverage to do other financial things. So
yeah, a couple of months ago,
thanks for sharing, Mason.
I had tweeted, somebody had said, "Oh, $2 billion offering or whatever," and I was like, "Boring. Get back to me when it's 10 billion." And no bullshit, somebody must have bookmarked it because on the earnings call, they freaking tagged me back into that post, and they're like, "Is this enough? 42 billion. Like, are you paying attention now?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm paying attention."
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's totally crazy.
Yes. I'm gonna hop off, but
man.
I'll be on Wednesday, and yeah, thanks for having me do a little cameo.
Thanks, Mason. We'll catch you.
See you guys.
Brilliant. Cool. All right. So 51,780 Bitcoin. That's on top of the $2 billion of Bitcoin that they purchased the week prior, or the 10 days prior. So sitting at 331,200 Bitcoin. Ryan, you posted today, you had modeled out the Bitcoin purchases for the next 20 years. And I think what Ryan had projected in this post that he made, I think he was assuming some kind of compound annual growth rate, going a couple years into the future. And I think he estimated that we would be at 333,000 at some point in the middle of 2026. So here we are in Q4 2024. All your models are broken, and there's plenty of there's plenty of capital flowing through the door. So yeah, pretty incredible. Anybody else have some thoughts on the recent Bitcoin purchase? Any thoughts on? I mean, what Saylor's doing here is front running the front runners, right? He's front running everybody. If nation states are adopting this at some point in the future, he's front running nation states. If other companies are buying this in the future, he's front running other companies in the future. As a shareholder, I want him to do that, right? He announced the $42 billion plan. I want him to use it when it makes sense. And if the ducks are quacking, feed the ducks, right? If there's demand for the shares in the market, use the ATM now and buy the Bitcoin now. I'd prefer that they buy it when the price is like it is today, as opposed to some point in the future. So maybe Ryan, I'll kick it over to you. What's your thoughts on today? I mean, it's pretty monumental. Mic issues.
Sorry, yeah, I was literally just taking down a note to do run the BAPD numbers, which is the Bitcoin acquisition per day. And just a one quick primer on the model, and it's not even a model; it's just a rough forecast. You know what I mean? It was like an estimate. What I did was I used the last 3 years of data, where Bitcoin per share looks like it plateaued. I start there. I calculated the rate of decay in the Bitcoin acquisition per day, and then just essentially extended that out by 10 years. And I mean, like Jeff's throwing around the bewilderment word. I'm bewildered at like the rate of change here, and that's why I wrote down in the notes on my phone, like, run the BAPD numbers tomorrow, and I'll reshare my old post where like we made like a recent high at 168 coins per day. That number might be at like 180 or close to 200 now. And that's a very simple formula. It's just the total number of Bitcoin that MicroStrategy has at any given point in time divided by the number of days since August 10th, 2020. Like it's a very cut and dry thing. And I just modeled that out going 10 years. But the main thing I want to say, and maybe I'll hold this for a second because I want to pass the mic, but I've got a main point that I'd like to make to just kind of get it off my chest.
Okay. I mean, you could go now if you want.
I would like to personally apologize to Dr. Fred Krueger. Some of you might know that 1 year ago, he and I debated. It was kind of my first time hosting a space. He has a ton of experience, which I should have just conceded to his experience level and the amount of money he has, or his Ivy League education, or whatever. I should have just conceded to that because I've put a lot of thought into this. Many sleepless nights of never sleeping. And today I realized that spot Bitcoin ETFs exist. And since MicroStrategy is simply just a one-to-one spot Bitcoin ETF, there's no reason that this thing should trade at a premium. So I would like to concede to him that he was right about this whole thing. And I would even be very intrigued to do a one-on-one live streamed podcast, whatever you want to call it, so that his audience, which he seems to care about a lot as he brags about this 100K followers, that stuff is so cringe. Someone talks about followers or like and subscribe or repost the page or do all this, it's a grift. But since he cares about that and has this big audience, I would really just love to have a one-on-one conversation with him with a moderator to kind of guide the conversation so that I can thank him. I want to thank him for being a necessary part of this story and for teaching me so much. Again, this guy's a PhD. He worked on Wall Street. He exited companies. Not like that Charlie Munger guy who's not looking for exits. He just wants to own the winners and just, enjoy watching the people that we admire and respect, watching them win in public. Not that. He's exited. That's cool. So I would love to unpack this conversation more with Dr. Fred Krueger if he's interested.
Well, that's I think you just easily called him out there. I mean, Tim, maybe we'll have you moderate, or Bill Miller, which I think he's offered to potentially moderate as well. So I think we should get it going. RIP 1X MNAV Bears. They're getting louder. It's kind of crazy that it even happens. I mean, if you think that you can go raise $1 billion at 0% interest and go run the same strategy, by all means, go do it. And there's a reason that this stuff is trading at a premium to its hold. There's hundreds of reasons that it's trading at a premium to its holdings. And unfortunately, I think we're just going to have to continue to battle these people in the comments. I think we've got a huge army of folks now within the Irresponsibly Long community. I think Irresponsibly Long hit 13,300 people today. I think it's growing at hundreds of people, multiple hundreds of people a day now. A few months ago, it was just a couple thousand people. So I think that's a number everybody should watch as we see that kind of social energy, that inertia, that momentum start to build. And so I appreciate everybody that's chiming in those communities. Please comment, ask questions, communicate with people. We need all of the the people in the comments as possible. So Ryan, we should absolutely get it going. I'm sure we can do it. Absolutely. Adrian, what's going on with you? What are your thoughts? We got recent Bitcoin purchase here, convertible debt. What are you thinking?
Oh, I'm trying not to make any comments about Krueger because Ryan just it was perfect. So yeah, look, we are at a point right now where I think this thing's really going to take off. I've been posting for months and months and months about Q4, that we should be expecting a lot of banger activity in Q4. I didn't realize it was going to be this big. Sailor's being a complete psychopath right now with the purchases. I personally think they're going to hit 500,000 before the end of next year. And I think they're going for 1 million. That's my bet. I think that by not next cycle, but the cycle after, so 2032, and I had this conversation with Peter Dunworth, that they're going to hit 1 million. And he actually had a very interesting perspective where he said that the powers that be, for lack of a better term, wouldn't allow Sailor to get this large if there wasn't some tacit understanding that MicroStrategy is going to serve as a secondary or perhaps even primary Bitcoin reserve for the US. Because if they were allowing him to get this large without the understanding that down the line he can be leveraged some way for US interests, I don't think they'll allow it to happen. And I've been kind of researching that thesis, and I think there's validity to it. I think that, once the conversations around the Treasury reserve for the U.S. really kick off, MicroStrategy is going to become even bigger by proxy, because think about it from a perspective of just pure greed. You have a corporation that will have, let's say, 500,000 Bitcoin. You have the U.S. government that'll have a few 100,000 Bitcoin. You have then an entirely different economy erupting all around it. He's going to be one of the most powerful men on the earth. And MicroStrategy is going to be, like you guys have been saying for a while, one of the largest companies, if not the largest company on the planet, with an entirely new economy built up around it. I just think that the people that are on Twitter right now, I personally think they're engagement farming. That's just my 2 cents. I don't think, I hope that Krueger and others are looking at this thing still using the NAV argument, because the NAV argument has been killed like 6 different ways. So if that's the best they got, I hope they're trolling. If not, they're missing out on the biggest investment opportunity in our lifetime, potentially. I mean, you got Bitcoin. We just talked about this. You got Bitcoin, you got MicroStrategy, you got AI. What else? What are the other big plays that people missed out on? Maybe Apple, Amazon.
Apple, Amazon, yeah, Microsoft. Yeah, it's. I mean, your opportunity cost of capital. There's no better place right now. It seems like in the crypto ecosphere, right? I want to hit on this convertible debt, because this is such a big deal, and people don't really get how big this is, and the magnitude of this convertible debt issuance that was announced at the end of the day. Not only did we get this enormous news about a $4.6 billion Bitcoin buy, 51,000 Bitcoin added to their balance sheet, which is 2 times the size of the entire Mara hodl in a single day, that was purchased in 5 days of share sales. So we've got this one huge thing. 2, we got this other huge thing, which is the $1.75 billion of convertible debt issuance with the ability to add another $250 million at 0% interest. 0% interest. I challenge everybody else in this entire Twitter ecosphere. Go get a $200,000 loan with 0% interest. I dare you. Good fucking luck. I don't think it's going to happen. And this is a huge idea, right? That debt is also unencumbered. It's not tied to any Bitcoin that they buy. So it's not like there's a liquidation price. There's no like scare tactics like the 1x MNAV bears. What if the price of Bitcoin falls to $30,000? Like, no, it's not going to happen. There's no liquidation price. It's not tied to the price of Bitcoin or anything. There's no EBITDA targets in the covenants. There's nothing related to it. This is effectively like a Bitcoin proxy backed bond with a minimized downside and a much higher upside. So I don't think people really understand or conceptualize the gravity of that. like a convertible debt is a hybrid product. It operates like debt on the downside, and it operates like equity on the upside. And so the buyers of this debt, like there's been a lot of questions about this. Why do they get 0% interest rates? They get 0% interest rates because of the design of the bond. Like you've got enormous upside and very little downside. And the buyers of the bonds have the ability to hedge the downside risk within the capital markets. And this is something that Ben explains really well, but I'm going to try to explain it. With these convertible debts, they have a delta of 0.7. So that means for every dollar that the stock price changes, the debt changes 70 cents. So it's less volatile than the underlying stock. So we've got that component. Now, you can also think of a delta of 0.7 as you've got a 70% probability of being in the money. That's another way to like think about the delta of the debt. So what these debt buyers are doing is they're shorting 70% of the entire position of their debt position, where if the price of the stock goes down, they're making money on the price of the stock going down. If the price of the stock goes up, they're able to short the stock more and effectively hedge out the percentage gain, the conversion price, with minimal risk. So this is a mathematical equation. This is a game that the debt players or the debt buyers are playing, and it allows them to get equity-like returns with debt-like downside. And we're going to be having conversations with people over the next week where we're going to try to provide or shine a light into this convertible debt market a little bit more, because this is it's a newer product. Convertible debt is like a newer product in the geological scale of financial products. And I think it'll be helpful to shine a light onto some of the history of the convertible debt market, who's been buying these bonds in the past, the design of these transactions, how tricky can they get, how much bigger can the convertible debt market get? Is it eating traditional debt? A lot of these other considerations within the debt market. So stay tuned on that. Note that as MicroStrategy gets included into market cap weighted index funds like QQQ, NASDAQ 100, and the S&P 500, their credit quality also increases. That's really important. If you want to raise more capital via debt, if you have a better credit quality, you're going to be able to raise more capital. So keep that in mind. They have the ability and the thought that they could raise $42 billion of capital with their existing credit quality. And as they get added to these other indices, I think we're going to see sparks fly, right? Like once this baby hits 88 miles an hour, you're going to see some serious shit. And we could see significantly greater capital raises, hundreds of billions of dollars of capital raises over the next couple of years. So I'm going to continue to use the word bewilderment because I think people are going to totally freak out. People have already totally freaked out over the $42 billion capital raise and saying they're a Ponzi scheme, even though their leverage ratio is less than that of 95% of other companies in the entire publicly traded stock market. So anyway.
So they usually price these.
My rant. Go ahead.
Like 20 or 30% out of the money, and then I guess it costs some to hedge, right? So do we know how much they actually take home and how much profit they lock in of that 20 or 30% that they could collect?
The conversion price is I don't know what this one is. I haven't looked specifically, but I think it's like 40 or 50%. The conversion prices are pretty high. But the debt is like 5 to 6 year debt. So they got 5 or 6 years to do it. Right. So yeah, they're holding that short position open, but I mean, go look at what borrow rates are like on MicroStrategy shares right now. I mean, they're still relatively low. So you can go borrow the shares to short them because there's not many other people shorting the shares right now. Everybody else is going long. And so you can borrow the shares to short. I think it's relatively cheap, but it allows you to have that flexibility and dynamicism to basically buy buy low, sell high, just buy low, sell high, buy low, sell high throughout the day as you see the price move relative to your convertible debt position. And you could just basically, you'd like hedge out your exposure like over the life of the bond. And so what's happened with the last convertible debt, like that we've had in the last couple of years, all of the people that are holding the convertible debt they've hedged out their positions completely. There's effectively no risk, and it's like an in the money call option, and they can convert when it makes the most sense. Either, MicroStrategy will tell them to convert, or, oh, here he is, the man, the myth, the legend.
The dungeon.
In the dungeon, the man, the myth, the legend in the dungeon. Ben, we were just talking about convertible debt, hedging out convertible debt.
I don't know anything about convertible debt.
You don't know anything about it. I tried to explain it because I've been learning a lot from you, and I've been researching the Greeks of the convertible debt a little bit more, and prepping for my call with Richard Byworth on Wednesday. So it's a fascinating market, and I'm intrigued to see where it goes, because I think you mentioned it's like an $800 billion market. Less than 1%, right? Less than 1% of the total global bond market. And I would assume that the flexibility and creativity you could have with convertible debt probably starts to eat up a little bit more of the total bond market.
The last report I saw, the estimates for the size of the global convertible bond market was going to be around 700 billion for 2025, and the U.S. makes up about 2/3 of it. So 467 or so is going to be the U.S. convertible bond market. And I think the new issuances that they were looking at was 100 billion. So take it down to 67 billion in the U.S. And right now, MicroStrategy was planning to be 5 billion of 67. So you can work out whatever that math is. But
oh my God.
So there's lots of room here.
Yeah.
Right. And when you've got companies like Marathon Digital that are also now, like, they're 42.5% out of the money in theirs, and they got $1 billion also at 0%. And MicroStrategy is a much stronger play in this market, in my opinion. So if they're getting those types of terms, I'm going to be pretty surprised to see MicroStrategy do anything but at a minimum match that. Right. Maybe they'll get 50% out of the money on these bonds. Right. I don't know. We'll have to see what they come out with tomorrow.
Let's think about that. So further out of the money is better
for MicroStrategy, because it's less shares that just get issued.
It's less dilutive.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Wow. Holy moly. 50%. How's that work? So 50% out of the money. It's just less dilutive. There are less shares that they would be able to buy with that total amount of dollars.
Take the current share price times 1.5,
right.
and then it's 2 billion divided by whatever that conversion price would be, determines the shares that would get issued.
Wow, what a fascinating structure. And I saw a convertible bond ETF that had some MicroStrategy in it today. I think MicroStrategy made up like 1%, but then there's other companies that you would normally see. There were like utility companies like PG&E, Boeing, Starbucks. They're like, all of these companies are doing this. It's just this company is way better to do it with because the volatility of the stock is way higher. So you have so much of a better ability to monetize the volatility and exit the position just way sooner. I would be curious to hear how quickly other equities convertible debt converts. I'd be curious to like what the average conversion rate is, or like conversion to yield, like time period. I would assume MicroStrategy is like way sooner than all other equities that are offering this convertible debt. Like the margin is probably that's interesting. I got a noodle on that one for a bit. All right.
Hey, I've got a question for Ben. Ben, are there any limitations on how many convertible notes that they can do in a quarter or bonds?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
Grain, I'll ask Richard that. I'll get some perspective on that.
Yeah, and so if they're ahead of schedule, look, they said they're going to do 42 billion, 21 and 21. They did 4.6 billion today. 5 times 4 is 20. They said they're going to do 21. I don't see how that takes 3 years. Is there anything, Ben?
Oh, no way.
Right. So
Right,
Ben, I
that'd be a
just
good
want
one.
to get confirmation here to make sure, because I don't read all this stuff. I rely on you guys. So Ben, is there any information that was in the Q3 report, documentation or wording, whatever it is, in the was that 10K versus the 10Q, saying that it says that they can do it in 3 years, but was there any wording that's saying, and we can do this as fast as we want, given market conditions?
No, but they're just providing guidance, right? And so they can obviously accelerate guidance. They can do it a lot faster, but I don't think he has any intentions of not still hitting those targets regardless.
No,
right? What he's doing right now is he's front loading scale. So the larger the scale of the balance sheet, the more he can execute in future years. So if anything, he's helping himself out here. But when you look at how fast they're moving, 6% over each year for the next 3 years would be nothing for Saylor, right? He'd be bored.
Right.
So why would you wait a year to go buy stuff if you could buy it today at $91,000 and change? Why would you wait until it runs up if you could just get it now for what's the current price? Hold on.
I think that's what he's showing. Right? He's not.
Yeah. So
yeah, no, he's going for it. And I'll say right now, I'm pretty positive that he's not done. I'm guessing we get another $1.5 billion on December 2 is going to be my guess, right? I'll toss one out there. Because right now they've got enough space on the balance sheet just with the price of Bitcoin today for another 1.3 billion, but then you got to add in the fair market value from the Bitcoin they'd buy from the offering, blah, blah, blah. But so I would guess that they've got a 2 billion out right now. I think the next one we'll see will be $1.5 billion, and that'll probably be right after QQQ. They're probably not going to do it next week just because you don't want the hedgers shorting your stock the week you're looking for an inclusion, which is what I think people saw happen to Marathon today, right? I mean, that's a much more impactful shorting position on Marathon for all those guys that had to get in position to get their bonds that, you just watch them get walloped all day, which was fine, right? I mean, people freak out and they think the market hates it, but that's not necessarily what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah. So I think Saylor's going to load up. Yeah. I think Saylor's going to wait now. I think he's got his 2 billion. Maybe he's using the ATM this week still, loading up that capital to go buy Bitcoin. They'll buy Bitcoin. They'll let things calm down next week. And then right after, my hunch is that next Monday, they'll announce the next offering. Don't know, but that's my guess.
Let things calm down.
Right. So let me make sure I get this right. The triple Q rank day is November 29th.
Correct.
And then what's the difference between the rank day on November 29th and the addition deletion announcement? I obviously understand what that means, the way it's written. But so on the 29th, effectively, we're not going to know if they're in it.
Yeah. 29th is just their data collection day, right? That's where they take the snapshot of. Yep, that's where they take the snapshot of how many shares you have and what your market cap is, right? Shares times price.
Got it. So they don't want to do anything prior to that 29th to upset that and just leave it be until the 29th.
Well, I'm not saying that's what they're doing. That's what I'd be doing, right? I'd be laying off for that week. Because what you see, everyone thinks that everyone got all up in arms when Jeff and I were doing our speculative analysis of how to execute this. And everyone seems to think that it's somehow immoral for them to not use the ATM that week. But if anything, I'd argue the other, right? I'd argue price is more manipulated when they are using the ATM because they're introducing non-organic sell pressure to the market. You only find out the market's real sentiment when all the inorganic pressure comes out of it, right? So this week we'll get some sell pressure from the convertible bonds. Maybe they're going to be using the ATM this week, right? That's inorganic sale pressure because that's caused by an event that's within MicroStrategy's control. So when you see the periods of time where none of that is happening, they're not selling shares with the ATM. They don't have a convertible bond offering out there that's got a hedge, right? Which happens essentially right when they're getting ready to execute the bonds, to issue the bonds. The convertible arb guys get in position, meaning they take their short positions right as they're getting the bonds. That way they're in position by the time they have them. So when they find out what their allocation is going to be, they start getting their short positions in place. And so you get that all happening. And so if he did that next week, one, you've got a shortened week because you got holidays in there and short trading days, right? You got a bunch of anomalies next week. But two, you'd just be accelerating sell pressure on your shares. So my favorite time is when they go into these blackout periods, or when they get to a week like next week where maybe they say, we'll just let the market do its thing now. We're going to take all our inorganic selling pressure out of the market and just let it do its thing, and we'll see what happens. And then December 2, they'll be back at it. My estimate.
Thank you. So I'm thinking, folks, I'll just say it on the call, and I had a previous call that went an hour and 40
attack the
minutes.
tail. Attack the tail.
I'm thinking, I'm just going
Give
to
the
say
people
it on
what
the
they
call.
want.
I'm saying, I think I'll do 6 million tomorrow, 2 million each of the highest strikes that open up tomorrow morning for January, February, March, whatever. They're 800 calls or 820, whatever they come out with. I will do that. I currently have 25% of the January 760s. I currently have 25% of that. Initially, I had 87% on the first day that it launched. And what I will do is I will really go hard January, February, and March. And people always ask, well, where do you get the money from? I will sell everything under $300 strikes. Do not copy trade me. And what I will do is I will sell everything under my 300 strikes, and I will trim a January 2026 position because that's grown. That was something that I did that grew out there. So where am I going to get the money from? My January, you can look in my posts. My January 2026 position as of today calls that total 6.6 mil. I will probably get 4 mil from that one, sell that off, pick up the other 2 mil from everything under $300, including the $300 ones, and then I will go for the highest strikes and do that. And that's something, like I said, do not copy trade me. I will do that tomorrow. It may take me some time to sell and buy, and I'm not going to trigger a taxable event. So that's what I'm thinking, because I think everything. I agree with everybody's saying here. And do people want to front run nation states, and they want to front run literally states like Pennsylvania or the U.S.? I want to front run the hedge funds and long asset managers. That's my goal. And the market makers will have to take the investment. So that's what I'm thinking. I'll go back.
You are a market maker's worst nightmare. I mean, there's no like. There's not many people there are not many people like you that are out there doing that. But there's more than you, right? Like
there's more than me.
There's more than you.
People.
There are dozens. Right. There are dozens of you, and that's a market maker's worst fucking nightmare.
Right. And again, the one last advantage, because I don't want to take up too much of the call, is that I can do this in IRA account without triggering a taxable event. And Josh's video today, he exercised because he then has to now hold it to trigger long-term capital gains because his was in the program. He's way better, not even close. Josh can out trade me in a second. His skill is way beyond mine, and I just can't do that. So I have to do what I'm good with the way my account's set up, and I don't think I'm long enough. I don't think I have enough leverage. So I'll do that, and I'll push the market up for myself, which pushes it up for everybody else.
Yeah, bingo.
Okay.
Yeah, the IRA non-taxable event is pretty huge. I mean, that basically just lets you borrow your tax burden, and that just makes your leverage leverage like it's just incredible. If with the ability to trade options and have sizable accounts to trade options in a portfolio like that you just have so much power. Whereas I've got a similar position, and I've made some similar trades in an IRA account, but like I think of them as it's like I'm running two separate businesses, right? Like I've got my brokerage account, and I'm running that business a little bit differently because of the tax burden. So I'm like exercising as much as I can over there because I want to manage the tax and like a future cash flow and get me to retirement. And then I've got this separate business over here, which I'm a little bit more degen with because I'm basically just like borrowing this tax burden that I'm going to have like 40 years from now. And it's like, yeah, I'm gonna lever the shit out of that thing, because my time horizon is so long. So again, none of this is financial advice. Don't follow what we're doing. Like run your own analysis. But the tax component and the strategy around it changes how you may view decision making in any one of those portfolios. So yeah, it's crazy. I mean, shoot. Somebody just asked, "Are these calls seriously mispriced?" And I think
I think the calls are mispriced.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just me. I mean, you look at the pricing on these things. Hold on one second. I'll pull it up. So you're looking at the. Let me see if I can find the right price. So the 760s are $26. You know, if you want to buy one contract, it's $2,600. I mean, hell, you go to Five Guys to get lunch for you and your buddy, and it's $40. I mean, it's like, God, you're like, holy crap! Is that for like two cheeseburgers and with bacon? You're like, are you kidding me? It's 40. And like, yeah, what kind of tip are you gonna throw on it? I'm like, I'm just trying to get a burger and fries for me and my buddy. So I'm like, $2,600. Look,
Yeah.
I get to somebody that has no money. $2,600 is a lot of money, but hell, that I've seen people throw away $2,600 on a lot of stupid stuff. So I think it's mispriced, but that's just me. I think Ben Workman's right. I think Punter Jeff is right. I think Ryan's right. Hell, Tim is standing there. He's interviewing the smartest people in the world, and they're like, "Oh, we think the number's going up." I'm like, "Okay, what am I missing, guys?"
Yeah. No, I mean, the leverage here, the thinking about QQQ, and this is like the future buy side horizon, and you think about opportunity cost of capital, you know, and what everybody's thinking, right? Like game theory, understanding game theory is understanding the playing field. You've got to understand the playing field that you're playing on, and you've got to understand all the players that are playing the game. And if you have an understanding of what some of the players are doing, you can make informed decisions about positions and your strategy. And in my opinion, this MicroStrategy play, and having a fundamental understanding of Bitcoin and the players that are in this game and the transparency of all of the players in the game allows you to make a really informed decision about the future. And this is one of those stocks where I've said this 100 times, similar to Tesla. Like if these companies get included to passive index funds like QQQ, there's zero incentive to sell to passive buy side volume if you think that Bitcoin is going to rip for all of 2025. If the price is remotely correlated to Bitcoin and you think Bitcoin, you're going to hold Bitcoin for all of 2025, then there's no incentive to sell MicroStrategy with a longer potential bull run in 2025. And so, Ben, you posted this today. What MicroStrategy is ranked almost 50th in the QQQ, in your QQQ analysis, which I think is incredibly sharp, right? Like that's probably as close as it gets on the total ranking. And we're upwards of, we're talking like $950 million of potential buy side volume with their market cap today. And we got like 8 trading days left.
A lot of game left to be played. Yeah,
there's a lot of game.
52. Yeah, 52. And so far I'm spot on because the companies in mine I show getting into the QQQ match what Cantor Fitzgerald's showing on their end, so we must be close. But yeah, and who knows?
Can we talk about this Palantir thing for a second? How crazy was?
Yeah, what a move, huh?
To
just come out and post that and say you're going to get tendies. I mean, that was bold for a board member. I mean,
for those that don't
know,
know,
but it was bold.
Yeah, what happened?
So Palantir was a NYSE stock, so New York Stock Exchange. They were listed on the New York Stock Exchange. They were just added to S&P 500 earlier this year, and they, like 2 days ago, like on Friday last week, they said we're going to move to NASDAQ. And it was just out of the blue. Like, we're going to move to NASDAQ. And then some board member posted, like, congratulations, all shareholders. We're doing this for you. We're all getting tendies. Like, nobody believed in us. Like, we're going to the moon. And then, like, 5 minutes later, that post was deleted and the account was deleted. And it was like one of these, like, holy shit, did you just say that kind of things? I don't think it's illegal. I mean, it's definitely true. That's what they're doing. Like, trying to get added to QQQ. And because they would get added and ranked at like 27th largest company or something like that. So, I mean, there would be significantly more buy side volume coming through the door, and like maybe they're worried about no future buy side volume, and without it, like maybe it's going down. But anyway,
well, that's a guy with an alt account if I've ever seen one who forgot to switch to it.
Yeah,
might want to go look on Twitter and see if you can find that post somewhere else.
That exact tweet somewhere else.
Yeah, right now they'd come in at 30th, which is 1.7 billion associated with that. So it's a good move.
Yeah, I mean, the reason we bring this up again, right? Like, so if you think about $950 million of buy side volume, that's not $950 million of market cap. Somebody's got to be willing to sell them the shares. I'm not selling my shares.
Yeah, but Saylor will, right?
Saylor will.
We could at least say that part. I'm not a proponent of this is going to create an immediate squeeze on the price. That's really not my belief, because I think they get in, and I think that the volume that comes in is much higher than the 963 million I'm showing right now, because there's all kinds of other sources. I had to cap mine to just the top 3 funds because there's not enough hours in the day to find them all, so I wasn't going to try. So if he's got billions of dollars coming in the door, and I've got another 15.3 billion on my ATM I want to use, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start selling those shares into that buying. While it's not going to impact the share price nearly as much, right? Because that buying's happening no matter what. Take that out of the normal daily volume, he's going to be able to do that. Now, it'll come later, right? For sure. It's just not during the period I think most people are going to look for it. So I think a lot of people are going to start doing the short options thing. That's why I'm saying this.
Oh, yeah,
They're going to start doing the short options thing going, well, it's got to go way up. And I'm going to go, well, you might want to give yourself a little bit of time here, because he's going to go capture that capital, buy more Bitcoin, right? And it's going to happen at some point. I don't know what the date of that's going to look like, but if you're Saylor and your only goal is to get more Bitcoin and use this ATM and make everyone who doubted the speed you could execute look foolish, that's the perfect time to use the ATM.
I think he's going to give everybody a Christmas present and say that they bought 200,000 Bitcoin on like December 23rd.
Well, he's not stopping at 200. I mean, I put that for easy math in my post, but if he's going 200, he's going 210, right? He's not going to stop at 200. I made that mistake before when I said I want him to have a $20 billion ATM, and then he went 21, and I felt like an idiot because it was so obvious. So I'm just going to say that if he's going 200, he's going 210.
210.
So guys, there's that Saylor video where he always goes, he always takes a deep breath, because he's explained the same thing 20 times, right? Everybody asks him the question, who believes in, whoever buys an asset at one point wants to go sell the asset, whoever those people, the same, we've all seen this video multiple times. It's 1 minute long. In my humble opinion, I believe that he's been doing this for 4.5 years, and he thought about it a year before he wanted to do it. Got his board to go in. He's been waiting for 5.5 years. For me, for somebody else, and he's worth whatever, 100x me, right? So whatever it is, so be it. After a while, your patience runs out. We're similar ages. He's a little bit older than I am, but you're like, you know what? I've been in this now I've been thinking about this for 5.5 years. I've been doing it for 4.5 years. I don't want to wait. And he's just like, let's go faster. And if people don't catch on, so be it. And so he put out that earnings report, 42 billion, and that's what everybody agreed to. And he's like, well, nobody said I couldn't do it faster. And so now he's going to execute on it as fast as he sees fit. And the market is reacting to that. I think, do we get a gamma squeeze? I don't know. Am I going to try and force a gamma squeeze and go as hard as I can on the long end? Yes. That is what I am capable of doing. I don't know if I have enough coin to do it, enough cash to buy it. I will attempt to do that. And I think that, as I've said before, I'm 57.5, and I got things I want to do, and I'm going to do it now. I'm not going to wait.
I actually think he might even be a little surprised by this himself, right? Well, I think it was always his plan to go big. I think he's been surprised by how few people have jumped in to create any level of competition in this strategy. And so he got to this point and he goes, well, I guess we're going really big then. So if nobody else wants in, we gave you plenty of time. Now we're just going to take over. I think even he might be surprised with the amount of leeway everybody's given him here.
Yeah, I just think that he just wants to see this happen. He'd rather see it happen sooner rather than later. And you just got to go look back. You can go and look back in December of 2020. I posted a little thing on it. Bitcoin in 3 months basically did a triple. It went from like 15,000 to 45,000 from November of 2020 to January or February, and then it continued to run up. This has happened before, but this is a different scenario with MicroStrategy and options. There was no spot Bitcoin ETFs. It's a whole different world. And so I don't know how much more bullish everybody can get, but I'm pretty bullish. I'm gonna drop off after another like 10 minutes or so. But
yeah.
Unless somebody has some crazy idea of what we're missing or other bullish term. And by the way, I saw this. If IBIT was, and this information's a day old, if IBIT was the BlackRock spot Bitcoin ETF, if it was a bond fund, it would be, I think, their 6th or 7th largest bond fund. Now, obviously, the spot Bitcoin ETF is not a bond fund, but it has just grown so fast that, and there's a lot at the very top, the top 3, but let's say it's number 4. This asset class has grown so fast due to Wall Street, and I don't know why. Why other executives don't do it is because they're comfortable, they make enough money, they don't need Bitcoin, they don't want career risk, they get paid, they don't want to be out of a job because they don't get it, or they're not curious. Any one of those things are a combination. And you know what? If you're 50 years old and you're Fred Krueger, a lot of respect from him, but if you're a CFO and you've made all this money, or a CEO, you're making millions of dollars a year, why would you take the risk on it? Doesn't make any sense. You're rich enough. Just keep on doing the same stuff. And that's why I'm so happy that Saylor came along, because now we have an adult in the room and he's crushing it. So
I don't know. I don't think it's a matter of risk anymore. I think it's a matter of ego. I think that a lot of these larger corporations, they don't want to be seen as second, third, fourth, fifth in a line to adopt this strategy and have it be hugely successful, because the first thing that's going to be asked of them is, why didn't you do it sooner? So from a perception standpoint, they can think it's a lose-lose. And individuals like that, many times they perceive things in a way that we can't relate to, because to what Grain just said, when you're already filthy rich, you're not really necessarily worried about, am I going to turn my 1 billion into 2 and how fast I can do it? You're going to be worried about how you're going to look while you're doing it.
Okay, I've got an answer for that. I've got an answer for that. First of all, they found Saylor's tweet 10 years before, thinking that Bitcoin would go the way of online gambling. Look, if Microsoft says they're going to go forward, if anybody from Microsoft is on the call, I'm going to give you what you can write in your press release. On January 12th of 2025, if you're Microsoft, you say, Microsoft has agreed to put X amount of dollars into Bitcoin. We have now decided to do this on the 1 year and 1 day anniversary of the spot Bitcoin ETFs, because they have now de-risked the market, and we think the market is mature enough for us to put a portion of our balance sheet into Bitcoin. So if somebody says, why didn't we do this before? We were cautiously waiting for the 1 year anniversary to happen, and we are a fast follower. That is my advice to anybody from Microsoft on this call, that you could say that, and that would be completely plausible to anybody on CNBC. Well, they waited a year until after the spot Bitcoin ETFs were approved. The real question is, why don't any other companies then follow after them? That is free advice that I'm giving for a press release for Microsoft to say, what was the thought for doing this? It did not take a lot of thought for me to do that. And if somebody says, why should we get into Bitcoin? On January 12th, you could say that to all your friends. Well, the spot Bitcoin ETFs got approved a year ago. How long are you going to wait? You're going to wait 3 years after it's approved?
But see,
that's a really good point. That's a good point. Go ahead, Adrian.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if that's 100% feasible, because I think people are underestimating how outside the box Saylor is. So Saylor isn't an executive. He's a scientist that became an executive. He's an engineer that became an executive. I think he did things because he went into MicroStrategy. He started companies because he wanted capital and money to experiment at a large scale. And what Bitcoin is right now is a global experiment for him to run, which is why he's being so focused and laser sighted about it, right? We're not going to find other executives that match that mold very, very easily. Even Elon Musk, people like to say Elon Musk and Saylor are similar. To me, they're not at all. Elon Musk is someone that is an opportunist that sees ideas and can scale them because he's smart enough to do it. Saylor is the guy that sees the opportunity, can scale the opportunity, and then can move on to another opportunity, right? He's the jack of all trades in this mix. So that's why I think he's very, very different. And any executive following him is going to have to take his ego out of the mix. So like Eric Semler, when I talk to him about Saylor, he gives him his flowers very openly, not in a deferential way, but in a, hey, he had a good idea and we are following it because it's a wonderful idea and because we think it can do X, Y, or Z. The CEO of Microsoft, the CEO, Tim Cook, none of these guys are going to come out and say that. And they're going to have to, right? So I think that's why I say the biggest barrier right now is ego. Tim Cook is going to have to go on MSNBC, CNBC, all these other places and say, Saylor had an idea. We were too afraid to do it, but now that it's working, now we're going to do it.
Yeah,
they're going to need a stronger angle than a press release. They're going to need something that's like a blitzkrieg of media attention.
Right, Adrian, I totally get what you're saying. I totally get that. But Larry Fink already had to do it. If Larry Fink could be humble and have the humility to say, initially he was completely against it, and Jamie Dimon, let's say,
but Larry Fink is like Saylor.
Well, so that's fine, but he had to get on CNBC and say that the world changed. And after he did the research, it made sense to him. And let me tell you why. And I'm going to drop off after this, but very specifically, Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan. That guy is a clown. Let me say why. He thinks that Bitcoin doesn't make any sense and is dead set against it, and yet they're an authorized participant. And so that's where he talks both sides out of his mouth. It's like, if you really think that Bitcoin is bad, you should not be an authorized participant. But he will say this for any form of engagement that he wants, and maybe he doesn't have the humbleness or humility to say that he was wrong. And so be it. So folks, look, Larry Fink was able to do it. Michael Saylor was able to do it. There's other CEOs that have been able to do this. And I had to say, you know what? And if somebody's like, hey, I looked at Bitcoin 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and I never bought back in again because I can't go back in time, and you're never going to buy it going forward, then that means you never understood it in the beginning anyway. And so if you're not going to buy in, you never did the homework, you're not being humble to say you got it and you didn't do it. And now you got to say, you know what? I changed my life and I'm going to go do it. And that is the mark of somebody that can change their thinking. If you can't do that, too bad.
Yeah, well, you know, look, there's a ton of argument about this, right? Like, we're talking about the top 5 companies. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of media attention on this. On like, the CEOs are going to have to, like, you know, put their ego away and say, like, they're going to have to take a stance on doing some of this. I mean, you've also got thousands of other companies that could do this without, like, drawing an enormous set of media attention, right? I mean, there's a ton more opportunity out there, aside from just like Microsoft and Apple, and you know, they're ones they're great to talk about, but like, there are thousands of other companies. I mean, look, I've got this close family friend, right? I talked to him yesterday, and he just sold all of his Nike stock. He's worked there for 20 years, and he's like got all this Nike stock. Just sold all their Nike stock, bought Bitcoin and MicroStrategy. And his whole thing was like, Nike's not innovative anymore. Like, Nike, when they came out, they were an innovation company, right? That was what they were. Like, yeah, they sold shoes, but they were an innovation company, and they're not innovating anymore. And he said, if they buy Bitcoin and start to innovate again, maybe I'll buy the stock again. And we're going to see this happen on a massive scale, right? Like, this is only just beginning. Everybody, like, I know this feels so crazy right now to a lot of people, but we are just, I think somebody posted earlier, like, we're in the batting practice of a 9-inning game here. Like, we haven't even gotten to the first inning, while it feels pretty crazy. And I think we're going to start seeing this shareholder demand. Like if MicroStrategy climbs to the top of the publicly traded leaderboard, let's say it goes to top 5, top 10, even number 1, other companies are going to go, wait a minute, I want to be up there. What do I do? And other people are going to be selling their equities of other companies and buying this company because it's, at the top of the leaderboard, or they're going to be buying it naturally via ETFs. But there's going to be a lot more buzz, and shareholders will demand this stuff. They'll get louder and louder and louder, because eventually the Bitcoiners are going to get richer and richer and richer, and they're going to start buying other shit too. They're going to be buying companies and other all sorts of other shit.
Devil's advocate, I think we're far more likely to see more nation state adoption than we are corporate adoption.
First, yeah, sure, yeah, because they could print money, right? I mean, stocks can too. They could technically print money with ATM offerings. They could do something similar. Understanding the design of the market.
Yeah, let me tell you, I agree with that, because there's no quarterly. I get there's a sovereign wealth fund for various countries, and maybe they do have quarterly reports, but for the most part, a nation state does not have it. They'll put it on. You could look at the gold is listed on the Federal Reserve balance sheet, and you can go look at it. So yes, it's there. Does anybody care about it? No. So our reports put out, yes. The question is, I've never heard anybody from the U.S. government on CNBC talking about literally the 8,000 metric tons of gold we have. Nobody would ever from the government even know what to say or that it does anything. So do I think that nation states will do this faster, or U.S. states do that? Yes. So, for me, I want to front and run nation states. They have $1 gazillion more than I'll ever have, and so be it. So all the folks on this call, you have that choice. So if you want to wait, I'm not going to wait for other Mag 7 companies to go do it. Saylor has said this now for 4.5 years. If they can't figure it out in 4.5 years, who knows if they ever figure it out. With that said, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you folks so much, and take care.
Later. Thanks, Grain.
Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, I thought this bull cycle was going to be corporate adoption, and then 2029 or whatever was going to be nation state, but we're getting it all this cycle. That kind of blew my mind a little bit, like how fast nation states were like, oh yeah, we're doing this.
Yeah, I've just been researching it a lot more and thinking it through. I just think that MicroStrategy is going to be a one of one when it comes to this level of adoption, and we're more likely to see smaller companies do it than any of the Mag 7 or any of the larger companies. And I think that the nation state adoption is probably going to be the angle that catches everyone with their pants down.
Yeah.
And
do you think they're starting to at least like sweat a little bit, like the Mag 7, or do they even know it's coming?
No, I don't think they are. Companies are notoriously slow to change, right? The reason why Jeff Bezos was able to go from garage to shitty office to trillion-dollar company is because everyone was asleep at the wheel. No one wanted to change. No one wanted to innovate. No one saw the internet trend coming, right? And Steve Jobs and Apple, he saw the trend of mobile phones. He saw the trend of miniaturization of computers and having computers in our pocket, so on and so on and so forth, right? Every one of those large companies saw a trend. Jensen Huang saw the trend. Saylor is seeing the trend, right? There are only so many trends you can see. And once you see the trend and you're already in that direction, other people can't come behind you like you're drifting in a race and try to catch up to you, right? They're just going to get smoked, and they're going to have to find a different race. So the three big races right now are finance, AI, and scaling AI, really, is what I think is going to come down to in the next 20 years. Saylor's not going to get into that. He already tacitly admitted that. He said they're too small to get into the AI race with everyone, right? They're too small to get into the computing race with everyone. So he had to find something else. And he saw the trend. And because he saw the trend, and because he's a trend seer and a trend setter, look at the mobile wave. People need to read that book cover to cover more than once. He's a guy that sees trends. And that's why I said he's an engineer and a scientist that just happens to be an executive and now a director or whatever, right? So with that said, that's why he was able to change his mind. Individuals that are quick thinkers and that are designers and are engineers, they can pivot. If one schematic's not working, I'm going to find another one, right? That's a very different kind of thinking. Larry Fink, he admitted that he was wrong, but that's because in his realm, he's a trendsetter. Look at what BlackRock has done, right? They've identified new products, which is just another way to lever money. So that's another issue. But they found new products and they've been able to innovate. They've been able to stay ahead of the game and they've been able to grow very, very quickly. Larry Fink is a very different guy. Jamie Dimon is a lizard. He is one of the fucking lizard people. He is not going to change his mind. Bitcoin can explode to $1 trillion a coin. He's going to be calling it a palladium rock instead of a pet rock, right? The guy is a fucking sociopath. People need to stop wanting him to change his mind. Warren Buffett, not going to change his mind. Charlie Munger, his eye would have fallen out again before he changed his mind. These guys are entrenched. They are not guys that can have neuroplasticity. Yeah. Okay, they're not there. So that's why I think the Mag 7, the only one out of that entire group that I can see is NVIDIA, and that's because of Jensen Huang. But to that point, why would they need to? He's on the other trend.
Yeah, right. So
it reminded me of a quote that I saw. I'm only about a third of the way through software, but I had to write this down. I'm going to quote it. It says, "To put it simply, peak storytellers are peak predators. They deserve caution." And I had to think about that. I'm like, who's telling Bitcoin's story better than MicroStrategy? No freaking body. Like, so the reason why I asked you is, do these other companies even suspect what's happening? Is because MSTR is like the apex predator right now, and I guess these guys just don't know it yet. Like, are they not even quaking in their boots? Because it's going to be a bloodbath.
No, it's because they're trying to change the trend. They're trying to change Jensen Huang. That's what they're all doing, whether they admit it or not. That's what Meta's doing. That's what Tesla's doing. Microsoft, Apple, all of them are chasing Jensen, right? So that's what they're laser focused on. That's a losing race. I have my theories on that, right? Saylor, the reason why he's so dangerous is because, you know what Saylor reminds me of? I had a science teacher in high school who wore the same shirt every single fucking day in high school, right? But he would occasionally come into these classes and have these amazing experiments that blows everyone away, that everyone was talking about for months on end, right? And then all of a sudden his students are doing better. And all of a sudden the grade spread of his classes are doing better, and so on and so on and so forth. Everyone found out the reason why that was going on is because he was going to the kids individually and figuring out what they each needed. And he was giving them tailored lessons one by one. That's the engineering approach. That's not a teaching approach, right? That's what Saylor's doing. And that's why no one sees it coming, because everyone's looking over to the left and he's on the right, just like, I'm right here, like, come over. And no one wants to do it because they're chasing the other trend. No one wants to try a new trend. If NVIDIA monetized their balance sheet with Bitcoin, do you have any idea what would happen? Like, just picture it for a second. Jensen goes in with, I don't know how many tens of billions. The price goes through the roof. NVIDIA goes through the roof even further. They go from 3 trillion to 4 trillion to 5 trillion to 6 trillion in what, like a year? Probably. Because of the sheer insanity that would cause. Look what happened to MicroStrategy. You guys were just talking about it. Look how quickly they went from sub 4 billion market cap or 5 billion market cap to now they have a market cap of like 80 some odd billion in just 4 years.
Yeah.
Well, it's wild because I just said that they're the apex predator, but like you said, they're handing out the playbook for free. So at the same time, they're the apex benefactor, like,
yes,
and which is also Bitcoin. You know, Jeff Booth says that that Bitcoin is 8 billion people in the service of 8 billion people, and he's like the apex predator, but he's also just this benefactor that's just reaching out a hand to help these people, these other companies too. So
I don't think
it's just this weird dichotomy.
I think he's helping, but I also think he wants to eat them.
Yeah,
he's setting a plate, and he's like, I got a lot of food on my plate. I'm willing to share with you, but any bite you take, I'm getting 2. That's the plate he's setting. They come in, it helps him. Nation states come in, it helps him. He's in a win-win spot right now, unless Bitcoin falls out the bottom.
Yeah, he can reach out a helping hand because he's not threatened at all.
Precisely.
He knows he's kind of already won.
The mafia used to give out chickens and turkeys during the holiday season all the time, but don't forget that they were dropping bodies all year. Okay, so that's what Saylor's doing. He's dropping bodies. He's winning, but he's willing to share. He's willing to be altruistic. But it's half altruism. I wouldn't say it's half Machiavellian. I wouldn't say that. I would say it's half self-interest. He knows that this also helps him.
So, Adrian, I agree. Adrian and Soleil, I agree with everything you guys are saying here. And I think Saylor even said this himself, right? Like Apple, Nvidia, Tesla, they're all monetizing digital intelligence, whereas MicroStrategy is monetizing digital capital and volatility. And those are different things. The more realistic and rational approach of what I see happening here. Nobody's going to do what Saylor is doing unless it's on a smaller scale, like 1, 4, 5, 10, maybe $15 billion companies where you've got like somebody with 50% or greater voting rights and has the ability to just convert to a Bitcoin treasury and like go hardcore. The larger companies are going to add it out of sheer necessity as like a diversification of their balance sheet. Right? Like they're going to be adding 5% of their balance sheet or 10% of their balance sheet to this. And it may help the stock a little bit, but it's going to be more of like I want to protect my capital that's sitting on my balance sheet. And here's a way that to do it. And I mean, you've got trillions of dollars of assets just sitting on the sideline waiting to do something like that. Yeah, it's crazy. Weird time. Also, I love what you just said there. An apex predator, but also an apex benefactor. Yeah, gonna noodle on that one for a little bit too. Ryan, you've been a little quiet. You got some thoughts over there? You've just been ripping up the chat.
Yeah,
I've been doing a little bit of this. I've been doing a little bit of that. A little multitasking, a little taking notes, a little bit of working a move here as always. And I mean, it's like the whole story here is just so incredible. I could take us back 4 or 5 months. We were, me, Ben, Jeff, the guys were modeling FASB fair value numbers with like 200,000 Bitcoin. I mean, it's so crazy. I was on the MSTR Mondays call today at noon Eastern. That's when I found out about the 50,000 Bitcoin was like live on camera. I was like playing it cool because rule number 1, you always got to be cool. Got to be, chill, but I was like playing it cool right there because I'd woken up only an hour and a half before the call and I was doing the house stuff and all that other stuff. So my focus was off the net. But I mean, the numbers are just getting so large to such a degree where I feel like all of the things that we've been saying about MicroStrategy having a monopoly position, like, look, we're not even competing with the global public companies combined. That's like over. That's done. We bought 2x Mara's stack today. You know what I mean? That's the number 2 company. Like, this is like, MicroStrategy being recognized as a country, as a nation state. We can speculate on all the white swan stuff. Is MSTR, the Bitcoin treasury of the United States? We can speculate on all that stuff. But I mean, as a shareholder, what else could you ask for? I mean, this has been a phenomenal performance, not just the stock price, but like how rapidly they've accumulated Bitcoin and just front ran Wall Street, QE5, and all of the other nation states. Like, what else could we ask for?
Remember that person, like right when MicroStrategy announced their stock split, said that they were selling all their stock because stock splits are bad for stocks. And the stock proceeded to triple.
Right. And I think that's why people can't look at one catalyst in a vacuum. You know what I mean? It's about all of the catalysts coming together, which if I was to think about all of the catalysts besides like the index inclusion and FASB, because we've been talking about how big of a deal that is for like a year now, I think the fact that implied volatility goes up as the stock goes up is something that is not only not priced in. TradFi cannot comprehend this concept. In addition to, so that's one point. Implied vol on the underlying goes up as the stock goes up, which is totally different from Tesla's long squeeze and Nvidia the past 5 years. That's just one point. Crap, there was something else I had there. It'll come back to me. But when we think about those sorts of things, in addition to FASB fair value like happening, which is going to be what I think an unprecedented jump in quarter over quarter earnings per share. This is kind of why we can't look at like one catalyst in a vacuum and be like, oh, it's a stock split, that means this. Or we see it in the irresponsibly long chat, like, are people going to sell shares after after NASDAQ 100 inclusion? It's like, did people sell shares after Apple was added into the NASDAQ 100 inclusion? Like that's the proposition we're talking about here. That's the opportunity. And who knows, we might all be like massively wrong, but this isn't some IPO that we're going to flip and like all be out of next week. You know what I mean? I think we'll be talking online and offline about MicroStrategy for many, many, many years to come.
Yeah. I did also want to say congratulations to everybody that bought the absolute peak on March 27th, 2024. $1,999.99. I know a lot of people bought then, and they were really upset when the price went down. And I wanted to say congratulations because all of you are now up 100%.
If you held.
If you held, you are now up 100% in 7 months. So congratulations to all of you that bought the absolute peak back in March. And fuck the Bears.
I do want to point out one black swan event that happened today. I was reading the 8K, and it might be over because MicroStrategy did not check the box in the 8K that said they're an emerging growth company.
Oh,
so we're going to have to see how we deal with this. I mean, I thought that was a pretty big omission, but we're going to have to right that wrong here one day. So hopefully they can get that under control and it's not over. I'm hoping.
We're a growth company.
So I have a bullish thesis, and
another one.
Man, you and I talked about this a little bit, Ben. So here's something I've been noodling on, to use your word, Jeff. Noodling. So with regards to what Saylor's doing, identifying a trend, right? My whole thing is that he's identifying a whole new economy that's going to erupt because of out of necessity, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So he's front running nation states is what I'm thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's become rather aggressive recently because of the change in legislation with regards to Trump coming into the office, potentially, so on and so forth. Yada. Okay, great. What if, and Ben, this is what you and I talked about, what if he's able to keep up the price of Bitcoin by himself, purchasing through the bear market, quote unquote, up until the next cycle, so 2027, 2028, 2029, and he's able to essentially make the market himself and become the primary market maker.
Yeah.
How do we then experience the drawdowns that we've experienced before, those 80% drawdowns, right? I don't think those happen. I think 30 to 40%, sure. But if the United States gets in size, and let's say that they're not going to use the 200,000 they have right now and say, okay, that's the first 200,000, we're not buying till, I don't know, 2026. Let's say Trump gets in and they start buying like now, right? You have the US buying, you have Saylor buying, you have options coming out, you have the ETFs. I think that when I did that post the other day saying that if we repeat what happened in the last cycle, now we're looking at $400,000 Bitcoin at the end of 2025. I think that scenario, the one I'm mentioning right now, if that plays out, that cracks us over 500,000. And I think that cracks us over 500,000. It keeps us in the 250 to 500,000 range until the next cycle. And by then, MicroStrategy's market cap is going to be God knows what. And Saylor's going to be able to buy even more Bitcoin, wash, rinse, repeat, but at a much, much grander scale. That's what I think could be happening right now. I'm no longer interested in potential corps. I'm looking at the nation state angle because Ben and I had an exchange. I think was it last week, Ben, or was it last week? Talk about
last week.
Yeah, and he dropped some nuggets that got me thinking. I think the corporate game is pretty much done at scale. I think we're going to have smaller companies like Semler Scientific and so on and so forth. But Max 7, I don't see it happening. I don't see a large company doing it unless Dell comes out of the woodwork or something. But I think the game right now is nation states, because that rip we had from 74 to over 90. I know a lot of you guys were watching it. Everything was being bought up like immediately.
Oh, yeah.
I know I was watching it too. Like guys, whoever was buying didn't care about the price; they were just buying.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's a corporation. That's just my.
The speculation seems to be that it's the UAE, which would be some of the biggest news that would come out, and it'd probably come out at Bitcoin Mena, right? So you got a couple weeks before Bitcoin Mena. But if they were going to do an announcement, that's probably where it would be. And my hunch is they probably would. I don't see why they wouldn't. But if they do announce it, the real threat with that is that the UAE is in BRICS now. They're a BRICS nation. So if these wealthy countries, right, and it's not just countries like El Salvador and all this kind of stuff going on, if it's these bigger economic powerhouses out there in the world that are buying, then the US is going to get their hand forced, right? Either they're going to go the way of every other prior reserve currency of the world, and there's going to be a shift in the balance of power, and they're just going to be on the receiving end of it, or they're going to get proactive, and they're going to make sure that they get out in front and flex the muscle of having the current reserve currency of the world, and they're going to go reestablish their place in the next asset that dominates the globe, right? Now, if they do that, I think 400,000, we're going to blink past that, right?
Yeah, it's going to
blink
fly.
And you'll wake up and it'll be 7 figures, because keep in mind that they've got to compete for the coins that are available, right? It's not like they have 21 million to buy. They're not getting mine. So they're going to have to compete for what's available. And because this stuff trades on the margins, and keep in mind, everything on exchanges also isn't available. Right? I know lots of people that hold their Bitcoin and they just have it on a Coinbase exchange or a Binance because they don't want to deal with self-custody, right? That's a reality. So not all of them are trading. So if there's 1.7 or whatever the number is, I haven't looked recently, but if there's 1.7 and now you've got the largest economy on the globe coming and trying to get a proportionate allocation to what their GDP makes up globally, if you don't think that price is going to squeeze faster than we can comprehend, right? Too many people still think like retail investors. This isn't a retail investment thing. This is a strategic, protect the standing of your country approach to investing. They don't care what the price is. They just have to have enough of them, right? To make sure that if they get pushed too far, they're in the lead already. So if everyone starts adopting this, they've got to be out in front of that. And I think that if a BRICS nation comes out and makes a sizable purchase, right? I've heard speculations. I don't know anybody who actually would know, but that it's sizable, like MicroStrategy style size. So I'm guessing that's, 150,000, 200,000 from a nation that's a part of an alliance who's got a significant goal of weakening the US dollar globally. So you're not dealing with rational investors at this point. You're dealing with countries protecting their power globally. And that is what causes some really insane things to happen on an asset with fixed supply. And so many people like us who are going, well, you're not getting mine, so you better find someone else who's going to give them to you, right? Yeah. That's going to be a wild, wild event when it happens. So cycles and all that kind of stuff, I think we're going to know by February if there's going to be any more cycles, right? The cycle might just be we rocket up the S curve and we're at the top by the end of 2025. That could really happen. Yeah. Right. And if the US says, no, we're not buying, I don't think it changes anything, because if I heard that and I was the BRICS nations and I'm China, I'd go, great. We don't want you in the game. If we get you out of the game, we do enough global trade. How many products are made in China? We do enough global trade that we're just going to force anyone who exchanges goods with us to pay us in Bitcoin. So fine, don't buy any, but we're going to force the global trade market over to Bitcoin. And you're just going to be sitting there holding all these US dollars that now don't have the same value because countries don't have to hold them in their reserves, right? So At that point, cycles are broken, right? There's no way around it. Do you care if we come down from 10 million to 8 million? Is that going to bother you? It's not going to bother me.
No. Yeah. I encourage anybody to read the chapter. It's called The Petrodollar. It's in the Lynn Alden's Broken Money.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll give you some really good perspective of like why the dollar is important and like the petrodollar that we live on today. Basically, Nixon in the 70s sent his chief economist over to the oil producing countries in the Middle East and said, don't come back unless you have a deal done for the dollar. And they told these Middle East countries, hey, we're going to buy a shitload of oil from you guys, but in exchange, you need to price your oil in dollars for everybody on the globe. And if you do, we will protect the delivery of that oil with our naval fleet. Boom. Deal of the last 50 years is done. You just secured the dollar, the demand for the dollar globally by the largest demand asset on the planet at the time. This is the reason why oil companies used to be at the top of the publicly traded leaderboard, is because oil was the most the highest commodity in like the highest demanded commodity. Over the last 10 years, that's shifted to data and information, and now it's going to be digital capital. And we're in this transformation of going from like oil to data and information to digital capital. And now we've got a commodity that you can reprice all of these other commodities in without having to use the dollar and being tied to the dollar. So I encourage everybody to read that specific chapter. It's a great book. Read the whole book, but like that specific chapter is phenomenal and will change your mind on like how global trade and global currencies kind of work and how some of the game theory can be, considered.
And for those oil nations as well, I mean, this is very strategic. If you look at all the pressure being put on industries shifting away from oil, right? So there's this shrinking demand that's probably coming. It might be in a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, but it's starting to happen where people are trying to push away from, using gasoline and all this kind of stuff. So they're still sitting on piles of assets that are really valuable that they're pulling out of the ground every day. This is a great opportunity for them to start transitioning the value of that asset over to whatever the next thing is going to be. So it's you're right, Joe. I mean, that book that's amazing, right? And yeah. I think people really would do well to go read that, comprehend it, because the balances of power shift all throughout history. And it's going to be no different now, right? Innovation is going to push us into that, whatever that next frontier is. We just happen to think that we're on the front edge of that right now, which is a cool place to be.
Yeah. I think I said that in Tim's last, in our in-person Quant Bros video in New York. It's a new frontier of digital capital. And I mean that. I mean, we are trailblazing a new frontier of digital capital here, and it's incredibly exciting to be a part of. Super neat. Well, look, we're at an hour and a half. This was, our Mondays are half an hour later. It is impromptu. We're getting super late. We'll do a quick final thoughts. Soleil, pass it over to you. Final thoughts on whatever you're thinking about.
Yeah, Bitcoin is just inspiring the whole space. It's inspiring MicroStrategy. I think it's inspiring us. We're kind of, benefactors in our own right. We're doing this because it's fun to do it with each other, but also, to try to, as the space gets more crowded, just to kind of provide a little bit of, pointing in the right direction, because there's going to be a lot of bad information coming into the space. So,
it's so funny.
I'm glad to be doing this with you guys.
All of the FUD is exactly the same too. It's like we're doing this. We're dealing with the same FUD that came out 12 months ago.
Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, it's just repackaged, and everybody thinks they're brilliant, right? Like, oh, the Hunt brothers, and you're like, dude, it's like we dealt with this 12 months ago, bro. Like, where were you?
Yeah, the last one I saw is, we're like free advertising for MSTR's stock pump. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Where's the next altcoin? And you're like, oh God, here we go again. It's like, dude, no. Anyway, all right, over to you, Adrian.
Yeah, no, I think this is Q4 is going to be great, and I think that what I was talking about, what you were talking about, what Ben was talking about just now with regards to nation states, it's the next it's the next rung in the ladder, I think. And if Bitcoin becomes systemically important, there's no limit to how high it can go, right? Because math and code can hold a lot of fiat in there, and I'm just thinking about all the different ways this can be played out, and it's getting really, really interesting with the nation state angle. So I think everyone should just sit back, enjoy the ride, and don't get shaken out, because there's going to be bumps in the road.
Absolutely. Tim, over to you.
Jeff.
Yeah.
We're going higher.
We're going higher. Keep it simple. We're going higher. All right, Ryan, over to you.
Yeah, the thing that I meant to say earlier when I was talking about the implied volatility on MicroStrategy goes up as the stock goes up, that's point number one. The main point number two that I would say is MicroStrategy's really flipped the whole operating procedure of a public company on its head. I always say Saylor talked about this in epic detail in the interview that he did in Brazil right before MicroStrategy World this year. But I mean, every other company on planet Earth, except like maybe like one or two of the miners, their whole operation is to drive the P&L, meaning the earnings of the company, and then the investor class, places a multiple on those earnings through the buying and selling of the stock. So you've got the implied vol going up as the stock goes up. Plus, this is the really only equity on planet Earth besides, Semler and a couple of these other guys who are inspired by MicroStrategy, who really flipped the entire playbook on its head. So that was the thing I forgot to say. And then as far as like closing thoughts, I just want to tag on to what Soleil said about, there is just an abundance of repackaged junk out there on the internet, right? And it comes from a lot of different people. The hardcore Bitcoin purists, it comes from bad equity analysts, it comes from the motley fools who just write like pure junk just to have something like on text. And let's look at where we're at right now. I've aggressively called out both of the Peter Schiffs. Both that person actually named Peter Schiff and then Dr. Fred Krueger, Stanford PhD, with superior intellect. The day before me and Doc debated one-on-one back in January of this year, almost 12 months ago, he said he would crush me with superior intellect. And fast forward to today, neither of the Peter Schiffs will debate me live one-on-one. What does that tell you?
I mean, hey, you've got a debate on the horizon. Tim or Bill Miller is going to moderate it, and I think we could go face to face. I mean, it's going to be way more entertaining than Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. I'll tell you that. Hopefully we could get the arena to be a little bit bigger.
They talk about it every day, and they pretend to like not care. They still talk about it every single day. Refuse to like open their mind up, and it's like, what does that tell you?
They've got no creativity. They've got no creativity. PhD in math. Like, you've got no creativity. I mean, the entire
all your bears will be destroyed.
It tells me that the engagement from the power loss shilling has dropped off. They need to find a new thing.
It has. Giovanni seemed to be quieted a little bit, which is good. I think that's
him and Fred broke up. It was rough.
It was cute. All right, Ben, final thoughts.
Yeah, first, I think Ryan needs a sweatshirt that has that tweet from Krueger about destroying him, his superior intellect. I think that would be an amazing shirt for Ryan.
So many merch.
Someone out there is creative and can make that happen. I think that would be amazing.
Superior intellect.
Other than that, the only thing I'll say is, ever since Mara closed their offering, Bitcoin's been going up steadily every hour. So I'm pretty sure we've got another buyer in the market here deploying their new toy. So we'll see. They're gonna deploy, and then MicroStrategy is gonna have a couple $2 billion here ready to go. So, but that's about it. I've talked enough. Everyone knows we're in a good spot. We got a long ways to go. Right, we're hardly at the finish line. So,
yeah,
job's not finished.
Job's not finished. Yeah. I think this little period this little pause period here at 91,000 that we've got is very similar to that like period in February that we had where the price of Bitcoin kind of stalled at like 50, 51, 52,000 for like 12 to 15 days. And then it ripped up to 70,000. It feels like oddly familiar. Just like the energy, maybe it's the noise that I hear. Anyway, yeah, Thanksgiving is coming up. Everybody, like, think about the social energy of the situation. This is a great time to brag. Talk about your prosperity, your bountiful harvest. Like that is what Thanksgiving has been all about in like all of humanity. So, yeah, have a great rest of your evening, and we will be back on Wednesday. We'll be talking about more things. In the meantime, expect volatility, right? Like tomorrow. If the convertible debt arbitrageurs start to short this thing, it could be a bloody day. Like we could see continued volatility for the next week and a half. And I think Thanksgiving week could be a fun week to hold the stock. So that being said, none of this is financial advice. We are just guys that talk on the internet. This is our little investment club, and we have no idea where the price is going. So don't go buy short dated call options because like we said something like, no, that's not what we do. We talk about, the things that we're thinking about and the stock. So we like the stock. That's it. We all just really like the stock a lot. And with that, have a good evening. Thanks, everybody.